What is quacking, everybody? It's been a hot minute, but I'm here to talk about a new game that I was really into for quite some time over this last month, and that's been Crow Country. Crow Country is a little game that I found that I was seeing advertisements before it came out, and then I forgot to get it when it came out, and then it was showing up again on my feed, and I was like, oh, I should get that. So I ended up getting it, and it came in about 3 months ago at this point. And the game is made by SFB Games, which, if you don't know that game studio, you might know some of their games like Snipper Clips and Haunt the House. And those are some pretty fun little games that I've enjoyed. And now recently they put out another game that I absolutely love, which is Crow Country. And the nice thing about this game is Crow Country pays a lot of homage to old school Resident Evil back on the PlayStation 1 and N64. So if you were a fan of OG Resident Evil, this is definitely a game with a lot of quality of life improvements that is just fantastic. The puzzles are great, the movement's great, the story's great. It's just very great overall. Like, I heavily enjoyed how much this game felt, how good it was, and it like hit me with some nostalgia as well. I was like, oh, this makes me feel nostalgic because, again, it feels like an older school Resident Evil with a lot of quality of life. So I ended up playing through this game, and a lot more recently as well is like this game really wowed me, and I've been trying to play through a lot of like more story-based games recently, like Baldur's Gate, like Persona 3. So I've been playing through like some games that have like been really wowing me, and this game is honestly no exception. And this game wowed me so much, and I really enjoyed this game so much that I did decide to speed run it. And I currently hold the New Game Plus 100% world record. I went through and I sat down for a couple weeks after playing this game a bunch, and I mapped it out, got the world record, and it was really fun. It was really fun, and I'm glad this game really struck that inside of me because it kind of takes a lot. I'm very heavily critical of the media I consume, so the fact that this game wowed me and got me so much to like dedicate like weeks of my time to get a world record is just insane. But that's just a little short bit of it. I'm going to go into full spoiler review territory now. I'm going to go over the story, gameplay, environment, music, all those different things. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can click away. Definitely go play the game yourself. It's not super long. The puzzles can be a little brain mushy at times. You got to think a lot to get some of these puzzles solved, but overall, game's fantastic. Highly recommend you go play it. So into the spoilers. So just a quick summary of the story. You're a young officer named Mara Forrest who ends up doing an investigation on the amusement park Crow Country, and it's a theme park in Atlanta, Georgia that's been abandoned for a couple years now after an unexpected shutdown. And then you end up just going into the park, and you're there to search for Edward Crow, who's still there, and you run into a small cast of characters. The first one being Arthur. You just kind of find him injured after breaking into the park his own way and getting cut on a fence. And then you find pictures of these monsters and run into some of these monsters. And as you go through the park, you start working out clues to unlock certain areas of the park and learning more about the monsters. And you'll end up meeting a lawyer named Julie, who's also in search of Edward Crow as she's there to serve him papers. You also meet Edward Crow's daughter, who's there to find her dad. And then a police officer who was also there to work on the case that you're working on. But he ended up having to show up on a bike because his car tires somehow got slashed. And there's a little hint that, you may have slashed his tires. Could have been you with some inner monologuing. You also run into two of Edward Crow's constituents, Marv. You run into him first. He kind of comes off as your scummy business guy. He's like, oh, look at me, funny. And then you'll run into another one of his constituents, Tolman, who is more the construction foreman, and he really does not want you to just figure out everything. Like, he's like, do you want to know the truth? Like, every time you go through different parts, he's like, I don't think you want to know the truth. Just leave. Get out of here. And there's just all these different puzzles. You'll just run around the park talking to different people. There's different dialogues, different settings as you run throughout it. And over time, you learn a lot more about Crow and Marv's mining operation and how they found these strange, weird green roots that on the inside had pure gold in them. And in order to find a way to sell this type of gold, they opened up a fake mine in Brazil and mixed it with a bunch of rocks. And that's how they were using these roots gold to try and make money. However, the Brazilian government found out that these weren't authentic, and Marv ended up leaving, trying to contact Crow. He's like, yo, man, where you at? Like, they found out I'm coming back to Atlanta. Crow's just MIA. And also because they've been harvesting these strange roots, it's been leaving these weird pools of like goo. And because of like this goo or like, weird extra runoff from these things, that's what's causing these monsters. They're also called guests. And when you're exposed to this, radioactive goo from the roots, that's what it turns you into. And over time, you'll just, turn into one of these guests. And as you go throughout the story, you end up finding Edward Crow, and Crow kind of speaks to you throughout the game through the phones, through the park. And then once you figure out everything, you'll confront him. And turns out that Mara, you're actually Elaine, who as a child, when you visited Crow Country with your family, you were attacked by one of these guests and infected. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with you. So when you were a little bit older, you broke out. Turns out you're just, a teenage girl who wanted to get all the answers and find a cure for her disease. And also, here's a fun little side note. Depending on your interactions with people in game, it'll show who you save and who you didn't save at the end of the game. So during, speed runs, any percent speed runs, you'll only have, a couple characters at the end, which is kind of funny. I do enjoy that. And like, you do have to talk to these characters. So like during speed runs, the most people that you're saving is Tolman and Julie. Like, that's it. You're not saving anybody else, which is kind of funny. So overall, the story was pretty decent. It was good. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the premise, like the whole macro of the entire story, I think was very good. I will say some of the dialogue was a bit cheesy. Like when your first interaction with Julie, like you'll like talk to her and she's like, don't tell me your life story, kid. It's like, were people really saying that in 1990? Because this game does take place in 1990. And because when you learn that Mara's like a teenager and stuff like that, I'm kind of a little iffy on that part. It's a little, weird that it's a young teenage girl. And it's kind of giving me like the Cobra Kai vibes, where it's just like, oh, that's so cool, but like, who's letting these kids do all this crazy stuff? But also it is 1990, and it's like one singular kid who broke out of a hospital because she's like, I'm dying. I want to figure out what's going on. So I can kind of give it based off her motives. So that's pretty good. And, along with that, I think overall it was pretty good, besides like, the cheesy dialogue. I won't say the dialogue was overtly offensive, but there was like a couple key moments, especially when Mara or Elaine's interacting with the police officer. Like, you can kind of tell. I think they do give away a little bit of it. Like, if you pay attention, you might already like catch on to some inklings of some things. But besides all that, there is one thing that I was kind of like, okay, there's a part in the game where Julie gets dragged in through the vents by the monsters, and you're like, oh shit, Julie's dead. Like, she's fucking dead. Cool. She's not dead. You end up finding her, and she was like, oh, the monsters are just like sad or whatever. And Tolman says they don't really like want to attack you. And it's like, why are they attacking me then? Is it because I have a gun? Like, is that the case? Like, it's never stated because I have a gun, they feel threatened, so they're attacking me. But like, if the guests are supposed to be like, docile, sad creatures who, like, these are people, these are real people. So when you're killing them, you're killing real people who have been mutated, of course. So, don't feel too bad. But like, they just like attack you all the time. It's like, well, how come she wasn't attacked then? Like, why am I out here getting like attacked? Like, I get it, gameplay purposes, whatever, but it's just like, if you're gonna say that, then it's just like, give me a reason why I'm being attacked, no one else isn't, But I do also like that there's a lot of mystery to this game. Like, where did those roots come from? And at the end of the game, when you go to fight Edward and he mutates into a monster, he falls back into a gooey portal. and it's supposed to take you to like a different world because that's where the guests are coming from. They're coming from that portal, and only one of them was able to speak, but it didn't really say much that Edward could, comprehend. So Edward's like, "Oh, I'm gonna fall back into this portal. Kill me if I come back as something monstrosity, like as a monstrosity." You do end up killing him. So it's like, where does that portal go? Where are these roots coming from? And is there more around the world? And also, there's a number 216 that just pops up written in blood all over the park. There's nothing about it. I've went through every single note. I've tried looking up and down. Nothing. There is nothing about 216. We do not know what it is. So it's just like, there's all these different mysteries, and it's awesome. Like, I love that there's mysteries, and it just leaves me to wanting more. Like, I just want more of this world. So I'm hoping we get like a Crow Country 2 or some form of that, because that'd be really cool to find out more about these like mysteries. Because at the end of the game, Crow Country's still up as a park. It's still in Atlanta, Georgia, a highly populated area in the United States. The portal's not closed as well. So the park's open, the portal's not closed, and there's still probably guests roaming around. Like, there's like an underground lab where there's guests as well. So it's just like, you got all these things. There's got to be room for a second game somewhere. Like, we got to have something. Like, there's got to be something. So I'm excited for that. Music-wise and sound-wise, like the music and sound of the game is so amazing. The monsters have very unique audio to them for each specific one. There's only about like, I think like 8 to 10 monsters, something like that. There's quite a few, and they're very good. Like the sounds they make let you know that they're there. Like, there's the spindle. It's like this big, tall, bony guy. And when you're in the same area as him, you can hear his bones chattering. So you know he's in that area. And you're like, oh God, like there's a spindle here. And as you walk around the park and progress through the game, the biggest part of the game that was like, wow, this is amazing, is there's a part of the game where it starts to rain, and you can hear the rain and the monsters roar, because as you continuously go through the game, like more monsters spawn, more traps spawn. Like, there's like traps being laid around the park, and it could be Edward Crow leaving them, it could be something else leaving them, because again, there's someone painting these numbers. But as the game progresses, there's all these different things. And this singular part where you're running through and like all the guests are just riled up, and you can hear their roars and screams throughout the park, and you hear the rain. It really, like, you can like kind of feel it. And I like that. I like running through the park, and especially when I'm speed running too, like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm speed running, going fast, but at the same time, like, that part always gets me. It like makes me feel good about the game. It like adds like more stakes on top to my speed run. Like, oh man, like there's all these monsters around, because speed running, not killing them. So it's like I'm running past all these monsters. I can see what's screaming, what's causing these roars, and it's just so nice. And then on top of that, if you go into one of the save rooms, it has this, nice ambient sound, has nice little music, kind of like a lullaby in a way, and it's cozy and you feel safe. And then when you walk up to the fire, the main character Elaine, she's like, "Oh, I feel safe for now, but like, I have to keep moving," stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, I do feel that way. I feel safe in this room right now, but I know once I step out those doors, I gotta start rushing through those monsters again. I gotta stop popping some caps, and then I gotta kill them, run past them, do whatever I need. And that's like very nice. It makes you feel safe for a little bit, but just outside those doors, there is more things that are out there to hurt you, and it's so good. And also like the goopy sounds as well from some like the little blob things. Those also sound nice. So just the sound design, really on point. And also I like how when you first enter the theme park, you hear the theme music playing at the entrance, and it's just like, you're like, oh, I'm just here to investigate this park. And then as you progress, like, no, you're not. You can hear the roars of the monsters. It's just so good. The sound design is so good. And then on top of that, you have the environmental design, the set pieces, how this game looks. And the amusement park honestly feels like the most unique out of every single horror amusement park game that I've played for the most part. Like, another game that I like to play that's a horror game is Outlast Trials, and they do have like a little carnival theme park ride with the carousel and a boat ride or whatever, and they have all these like mini games and stuff. It feels very generic and cliche. I will say when you go inside the boat ride, that looks nice from the Outlast Trials perspective, but like overall, like it feels kind of generic on the outside with all the mini games, like your stereotypical throw the thing at the target and you win a prize. But in Crow Country, you can like feel the distinction from the amusement park. You can feel when you go into the fairy forest, I think it's called, the fairy woods. You see the great green fairy, and you can talk to her, and then you see the mushroom, the big mushroom face. You walk in there and you have the banquet and the table. There's a little mushroom house as well, so that's very nice. And then you go into the ocean side, the ocean looking place. On the ground, it looks like you're actually just walking on sand. The pathway is sand. They have a submarine you can enter into. The dining birthday area has like these underwater Atlantis pillars. Like, it looks really well done. The only thing that does kind of like fall a little flat for me is the Halloween haunted area. Kind of feels like a just generic haunted house to a degree, with different set pieces. It has its haunted mansion. It's got this haunted torture chamber where like kids can pretend to be tortured. I will say the maze feels very great. I love the maze, and I love the maze puzzle. That is probably my favorite part of the game, is running through the maze. So overall, just like those different environmental pieces feel really good. Like, I say the horror part of the theme park kind of like fell flat a little bit and felt a little generic, but it's still very good. The crypt, going to the crypt and solving the crypt puzzle, so good. Like, it's still so good regardless if it falls a little bit flat, and it does make up for that with the mechanics and like how the game is played out. Now, the gameplay is amazing for what it is. The gameplay is just an upscaled, huge quality of life version of old school Resident Evil. Shooting feels great, and I feel like I'm in 100% control of my character. Like, I feel like if I make a movement error, it is my fault. I can't be like, the game sucks. Like, I can't blame it on the game. Like, the movement feels very good. Like, you have a lot of control of your camera, and you can instantly, move your camera to face the way you're facing if you aim your gun. Running around feels good. Swapping weapons feels, fine, because there's only 4 weapons. If there was more weapons, I would say that feels a little clunky. Maybe there could be something that you could, have like a weapon wheel, maybe, perhaps. But besides that, like, shooting, you have full control of your gun. You're in charge of your gun. You're in charge of how you're moving. And overall, the movement is just great. The hitboxes are kind of precise in a way, especially if you're trying to shoot the crows in New Game Plus. They're a little bit precise, but the grenades are very nice as well, because you don't have to swap to grenades. You can throw grenades while you're aiming your gun. So it's nice. I don't have to be like, okay, well, I swap to grenades, throw grenades, swap the gun. So that type of fluidity feels very nice in the game. And also, when you're fighting things in the game, it feels fair and fine in a way. Like I said, if you mess up these fights, if you get hit, it's most likely your fault. And there is destructible environments as well. There's like a oil barrel that you can shoot and it explodes and kills things. And the 4 mini bosses are so good. They're so good. The monsters are so good when you have to fight them. They all do different things, and like, it's like a unique fight every time you fight these monsters and having to deal with them. There's like a big guy with like an iron bar or whatever. There's like this one guy who like throws his, like, he doesn't throw his head at you, but like he attacks with his head, so he like beats you with his head if you get too close to him. There's like the different types of slime. There's like the tiny slimes, and then there's like another one where its face will come out and just hit you from a farther range. So all those things are just really fun. Fighting the enemies is really fun. The 4 mini bosses are so fun to fight, especially the guy. Like, there's one in the cage, and he doesn't activate if you don't open the cage and look inside. But if you open up his cage and like look inside, when you come back to the area a little later, he will jump out and he will attack you. And it's just like, whoa, that's crazy. There's also the mini boss that you have to fight when you're trying to like turn on the power for the underground. So all these mini bosses are just really, really fun to fight, and the gameplay overall just very fluid, very nice, and nothing felt like I was just like being taken away from anything. Like I never felt like, you know, anything was too clunky. The puzzle mechanics were very good as well. Solving the puzzles, I felt the mechanics for the puzzles weren't, you know, clunky at all. It was very fine and nice. Also being very mindful of your environment as well. That's where your movement comes in, where it's just like there's bear traps, there's different traps that you can run into. So that's where I'm just like, it's more of my movement. Like every time I've ran into a trap, it's because I'm not paying attention, and less of like, oh, it's the game's fault. Like it's not like clunky when you're playing old school games. So overall, the game is fantastic. This is a great template, a great jumping off point for SFB to just expand upon this world. I would love a Crow Country 2. Like there's so much like in this game, so much questions, theories, things to think about. It's just a great experience. This game definitely wowed me. So yeah, go play this game. It's amazing. And I will see you in the next one. Take care. Peace.